All right, hello everyone and welcome to our clinical pharmacist panel. My name is Russ Scarpa. I'm a P3 PharmD student here at the University of Rhode Island, and for about another month, the president of SSHP. So thanks so much for joining us tonight. We have some great panelists here. I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves and we'll get started. This will be a question and answer format. I'll start us off, break the ice with some introductions, and I have plenty of filler questions. But if at any time you have one of your own, please feel free to either unmute and ask, or you could send me a message and I'll read it out for the group. To start off, Dr. Valencia.
Hi, it's Oliva.
What?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Patty Valencia. I'm a PharmD, graduated from URI. I am a vice president and head of global patient safety at Ironwood Pharmaceuticals in Boston.
Awesome, thank you. Dr. Lee?
Hey everyone, my name is Patrick. I am originally from Maine. I went to the University of Rhode Island as well. I graduated in 2020. I did my PGY1 at Tufts Medical Center, where I stayed on to do my PGY2 in pediatrics. And then I recently joined the Lifespan Hasbro team, starting the new pediatric emergency medicine service line. So nice to meet you all.
Dr. Austria?
Hey, my name is Rebecca. I'm a URI COP grad from 2012. University of Rhode Island sent me to Alaska to do a ambulatory care rotation at a rural hospital here. And I loved it enough to come back to Alaska. So I've been in Alaska for about 11 years now. And I kind of specialize in rural healthcare, and I've done a lot of traveling throughout rural Alaska, and I did a season in Antarctica, kind of in a niche field of rural medicine.
Really can't wait to hear more about Antarctica. Dr. Fraielli?
Well, mine's going to sound pretty boring after Rebecca's, but I actually graduated from URI in 2014. Did a PGY1 residency at UMass, and I've stayed on at that institution since in various roles, currently serving as a clinical coordinator for the acute care and ICU pharmacy teams. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And Dr. Poskus?
Hi, I'm Mallory. I graduated from URI COP in 2018, and then I went on to do my first year of residency at VA Connecticut, my second year at VA Boston with a specialization in psych pharmacy, and then I have been since stayed on at VA Boston, and I have kind of a blended inpatient role where I do mixture of operational and clinical roles, so I have a little bit of both experience.
Awesome. So get started. We'll just start down the line. We already did everyone's names and your institutions. You're all from pretty diverse roles. Would you all be able to take me through basic day-to-day responsibilities, what you're doing, when you go in for work and then by the time you leave?
Am I first in line? I'm taking it.
Yeah, you can be.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in industry like 25 years, so my role has like changed a lot. Now I oversee a lot of work, right? But it's still the same type of, it's a nice interplay actually with like operational work, right? And clinical work. Probably the main thing like my team is responsible for is pharmacovigilance. So in drug safety, right? Once a drug gets on the market, it's not like you just wave goodbye to it, right? I mean, like actually a lot of the work is just starting. And one of the things we have to do, right, is keep reviewing and looking at the safety profile of the drug, right? Because as you know, in a clinical trial setting, it's relatively small, like 3,000 patients, but once it gets out into the bigger world, that's when the real work starts. So, we review data on a regular basis, look for trends, look for any signals that might, say that, right, there's other events that we didn't see in clinical trials, and we do a lot of, it's like perfect for a PharmD, right? Because you have to examine all the information, all the data, and look to see if there's any confounders, and what would make you think it was your drug So that's like the big thing I'm responsible for, but we also are involved in like protocol development, case processing, where we take in adverse events from like the real world, right? You know, like if a pharmacist or a doctor calls us, or clinical trial cases, and we process those into the safety database. So that's about it in a nutshell.
That's great. Thank you.
I can share a little bit about my day. I would say each day can vary a lot in the ED depending on what patient rolls through those front doors. But my primary responsibilities are patient care. So responding to any traumas that come through, codes that come through, medical emergencies, rapid sequence intubations. So really bedside drug information, some dose preparation, like coordination with the team just to select the right medications. I'd say it's really like the primary focus of my role. Outside of that, we have a lot of pharmacy learners, so API students, PGY1s, PGY2s. So there's a whole layered group of learners that will come through the Hasbro ED as well. So working with them along with my other nursing colleagues to provide in-services, the physicians, so kind of just being a part of the team. I'd say another chunk of my role is like guideline development, some like small QI projects associated with that, but just making sure we provide the best care for those patients.
I can follow Patrick, since my role is very similar, just on a different patient care unit. My primary responsibilities are clinical as well. Up on the cardiology, the acute care cardiology floor. So seeing a lot of ACS patients, different arrhythmias, managing all the comorbidities like hypertension, hyperlipidemia, diabetes. Patient care, you know, we're reviewing orders, rounding with the wards team real time. We're looking through clinical events through the EMR. We do a lot of precepting, so that's another hat as well that we were in the clinical role. So we have PGY1 and PGY2 residency programs. We currently have 2 PGY2s in cardiology, so doing a lot of work with them, both on rotation as well as through research. And then as part of the coordinator role, I've taken on some admin responsibilities as well. So again, along with what Patrick was saying, some protocol and policy development, overseeing different teams and some scheduling. And yeah, wearing a lot of different hats. You never know what you're going to get asked in the pharmacist position at the hospital. So it keeps things exciting.
All right, I'm up next. Yeah, I don't know if there is a typical day when you're kind of been a travel pharmacist. So I've been traveling for the last 4 years. And I think I've had 6 different assignments in that time period. I enjoy longer stays at the places that I travel to. I feel like it just helps me to get more into the community there and the workplace environment. Most of the places that I've worked at in rural Alaska are Indian Health Service hospitals. So we have a small pharmacy staff that have to provide both the inpatient and outpatient pharmacy needs for, usually it's a small population, but we're across a vast geographic area. I know my first travel assignment was in Bethel, Alaska, and that is, I forget if the population is about 20,000, but it's across an area the size of the state of Oregon, and you have 1 pharmacy. So, and that was probably one of the larger Indian Health Service facilities in Alaska. I think they had 12 staff pharmacists that would rotate through there. So you definitely kind of get your fingers into whatever your area of interest are. Like we had 1 pharmacist at that hospital who was completely dedicated to pain management and you know, doing like the substance abuse treatment counseling, and then also the pain management, you know, managing those prescriptions, patients, providers, keeping everyone on track with their orders. I've traveled to places where I've done strictly inpatient. In my role right now, I'm actually strictly outpatient and focusing on mail order to services in Alaska that don't have a pharmacy accessible. And then, of course, when I was in Antarctica, that was mostly just an urgent care facility. We didn't do any chronic medications there, but we were the medics on call for roughly 1,000 people at McMurdo Station.
I guess I'll go. So I, as I mentioned, have a blended role, and my day primarily starts more operational. So I get in the pharmacy. It may be dispensing controls to the various units. It also could be helping the IV technician prepare the IVs for the day, verifying orders. The thing that makes my hospital rather unique is we don't have like Kyle and Patrick would not know what to do at our hospital. We have like only units are mostly psych. So even when I'm verifying orders, it's very psych focused. We have a long-term care unit, a spinal cord unit, and a hospice unit, but not a lot of acute care. So the orders are much different than we typically see in a more intensive care hospital. And then like, for instance, today at around 8:30 or 9, I would go over to the inpatient psych acute unit and I would round with the team. We are rolling out a new drug at our, well, it's not new, but it's new for our facility. So I've been creating like a worksheet in not only like information, but like how to order it. Because if anyone's ever been at a VA, it's very convoluted ordering system. So just kind of working with the providers and administrators. And then on the side, I do like to work on various projects. So that's something I'm lucky I have time on my job. So I don't have to like spend a lot of time outside of work working on projects, but it's something I also enjoy doing. So like right now, the main one we're working on is starting a sterile syringe exchange program at our VA. So we have a lot of roadblocks we have to come over before we start it, but it's making progress. So that's good.
It's awesome. I really like that you mentioned that, but the side projects and stuff like that. And I know everyone hinted to this here and there throughout your responses, but does anyone have any short stories or thoughts about the unique value that you bring to an organization as a PharmD in that role? Like Dr. Lee, like in the emergency room, how often is someone glad there's a pharmacist there next to them to turn to? Not to put you on the spot.
No worries.
Quick example.
Yeah, I would say, like, again, each day is very different. Like thinking about yesterday, we had, I guess like a very rare situation where we had a patient come in with methemoglobinemia. So we had a patient come in, he presented cyanotic, blue, really disoriented. So in bedside response with the team in the trauma bay, working alongside the providers, we were able to send some stat blood tests. The levels come back indicating that we have methemoglobinemia. And then with that, because I'm at the bedside, I'm able to coordinate with central pharmacy to bring like methylene blue and then prepare like essentially an antidote at bedside. I think there's a lot that goes into bedside care, but I think developing relationships with your providers and nurses is really valuable with that. So they can sort of earn that trust and collaborate with them, sort of anticipate what needs they have. So for instance, methylene blue has some unique parameters where we can't dilute it in NS, has to be in D5. So kind of anticipating those questions from nursing, preparing the bag in D5, and then having like a D5 bag available to flush the line, just so that way the nurse can focus on all of her assessments that she's already going through. She has a lot on her plate too. So I think just like a team response is really valuable there.
That was like the perfect response I could have hoped for. That's a great story. So
Very rare. That does not happen most days.
Not a lot of methemoglobinemia, thankfully. Anyone else have any quick snippets, or we can keep on moving? We have a question for the group. Did any of you envision the position of career interest that you are in when you were in college? What was your vision of a pharmacist in college? So did you think, when you were in college, did you think you'd be where you are now? And when you were in college, what did you think of when you thought of a pharmacist and what a pharmacist does?
I can start. I would say probably not. And it kind of went on something I wanted to like bring up to everyone in general before I left today, was that I think especially, well, I even still am guilty of this, but especially when you're in school, you feel like you have to take a very specific path to where you like dream of being. And I even think in life, you know, I thought wouldn't live in an apartment still, but here I am. So so I think similar in your role, you realize like there's always time and opportunity to either make the role you have like kind of what you want, and also to find other roles that are fit if you're patient. Like there's always jobs opening, people shift around. So I think that, you know, don't be in a rush to get your dream job right away, because that can be a lot of pressure when you can often find things you like or opportunities if you're just willing to try new things. So for my job, I not only am able to do things I never expected or thought I would enjoy, but I've even applied to jobs in the past that I never thought I was qualified for or would ever consider. But then once I was able to like be more open-minded and less fearful of failure or rejection, then, you know, it opens a lot of paths. So I think that's also good to know.
Yeah, I'll echo some of the stuff Mallory mentioned. And I don't know what year of school each of you are in. It's probably varied in the crowd here, but definitely using both job opportunities as an intern and then your APA year to be exposed to all different areas of pharmacy. I definitely still have probably only seen about 1/3 of areas exposed. I mean, I just learned about some positions I had never even heard from Rebecca. So you just never know, you never know what you may be interested in if you don't explore those opportunities. And so, to answer part of the question, getting into pharmacy school, when I really started thinking seriously about it back in the 2000 and 7 or 6 at this point, my idea of a pharmacist was, this friendly neighborhood man or woman that is just so helpful at the pharmacy counter, dispensing medications everyone seems to trust and love, and thinking that, retail was what pharmacy is. And I think I honestly think a lot of the community somewhat still sees it as that. And even just within this panel, you can see how many different roles a pharmacist truly can have. So keep your options open, explore different opportunities. And I think like Mallory said, don't decide too soon, or don't, get your mind set on something unless you know for sure it's absolutely what you want.
Yes, one of the reasons why I love doing this panel, because we're all in clinical roles here. And I know when I started pharmacy school, like you said, I really didn't know most of these positions existed. I wasn't really quite sure what a pharmacist did, but it sounded good to me.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it took me, like when I was in pharmacy school, like it's basically, right, like hospital or community pharmacy is what you usually think of, right? But I was always interested in industry, but there's never like a direct path. Now they do have APPEs and fellowships, and we have APPE students at Ironwood, and we have fellows too, right? We have like a 2-year fellowship program, and it's a combination of drug safety pharmacovigilance for a year in regulatory. And we also have a separate one in clinical, that's clinical development for a year, and medical affairs. And all of those can be PharmD kids, right? And it's one of the professions, I think, that you're uniquely suited for a lot of different jobs, and you just don't realize it. Like, like industries like some nebulous blob, and I didn't realize till I got in it that there's like tons of stuff that you're suited for, because you have such a good background, and not just, drug therapy and the chemistry. But I mean, there's tons of pharmacists that are in labs, right? And then, or specialize in pharmacokinetics. Or like there's like every pharmaceutical company has like a supply chain pharmacy, right? There's a pharmacist that actually makes sure the drugs get to the different investigator sites to support the clinical trial. And if there's a placebo, they have to make sure the placebo looks exactly like the test drug. I mean, so there's a lot of different avenues. So if you like, laboratory science part, there's that whole world. If you like more operational aspects, there's that side. If you like, you know, like the clinical side, there's, you know, between running trials or like doing drug safety, or if you like the educational arm, that's like medical affairs, right? That goes to different healthcare providers and does like educational seminars with them. So there's a lot. Labeling, regulatory, someone's got to make that label, that patient package insert that you read. So like the world's your oyster.
Definitely. A lot of different rooms
Yeah,
for
yeah, there's a lot.
engagement. We
Yeah.
have a question in the chat. What % of your academic learnings do you use in real world versus how much have you learned on the job or on your rotations in your last year of school or in residencies?
I can jump on that to start. I would say I still rely on the baseline knowledge that I learned through school. But I think it's something that I'm still building upon, like each day, like I still see new things. I am like, I don't know, I have to look that up. So I think each day I'm learning, and through residency and like into your job, I think I have learned like how to apply those to patients and sort of those like real life applications, maybe like some of the operational touches about like, oh, this medication is not available right now. We have this option that is available in the Omnicell right now. And then the next dose we can get to optimize this or that. So I think you can kind of layer those applications of patients and operational things as you grow into the role that you're in. But from my experience, always with that foundation of the things that we learned in school.
It's perfect. Yeah, it's practicing, right? Only practicing medicine.
Yeah, I will add one thing too. Yeah, like I'm mostly psych, so what I learned in psych is helpful, but you do forget a lot of things, or it's constantly changing in medicine. And I think like just making sure your transferable skills, like how to deal with conflict with groups of people in a group project, or you know, dealing with deadlines, and that's stuff that you're so used to in school that is really prepares you for the work environment and residency. And so I think, yeah, if there's an area, and honestly, an example too is I really hated infectious disease. I'm still bad at it. Don't ask me questions. But once I did rotations and residency in it, it's like I found there's a lot of similarities to areas of medicine I like, because it's a lot of like solving a puzzle. And I was kind of much more interested and wish I, you know, maybe focus more in school. So I think it becomes more interesting when it's applicable to patients. So don't fret if you feel like you may not like something in class as much. You may love it in practice.
I like that. Another question in the chat. What unique value do you feel that you've received from URI versus, you know, any other pharmacy school? Bearing in mind we're prospective students, so answer carefully.
I mean, I would definitely say I would not be where I am today or where I've been if it wasn't for URI. When I was a senior in high school, or maybe a junior, I remember touring about like probably 3 or 4 pharmacy schools, and then 3 or 4 other non-pharmacy majors. So I visited a bunch of schools, mostly in New England. And I remember the day that I shadowed a URI College of Pharmacy student. They were all talking about their friend who was a year older than them and on this rotation in Alaska, you know, and the cool things that she was doing out in middle of nowhere. And I remember thinking, even though I hadn't even been accepted to URI, that I was going to do that rotation, you know. And then like fast forward 6 years and I got it. And I remember thinking like, okay, now what? Like, I don't know if I was really fully prepared for this. I prepared for the rotation by watching a lot of Alaska State Troopers, which is probably not the right way to prepare for that. You know, and then I got out there and I had such a blast. It was like a life-changing experience for me because I had never traveled that far out of my comfort zone before. I remember my first week on rotation, we had a botulism patient, which is actually still fairly common in rural Alaska due to the traditional ways that they prepare food out here. we deal with a lot of medevacs because of how rural we are. So medevacs from rural, villages into our hub town, and then more medevacs from our, acute care or critical care access hospital to Anchorage has the main hospitals in the state. So yeah, it was just an eye-opening experience. And I did attempt after my internship to go back to New England, and my life plan as I had writ it, called for me to be practicing in Maine, but I got the bug with Alaska, so I came back here. And I did actually get to do a travel assignment at that hospital that URI had sent me to for an internship. And I'm always just so glad that URI gave me that opportunity to push myself outside my comfort zone. Definitely gave me the tools that I would need for success on the internship. And then I was able to go back as a practicing pharmacist and give back to that community. That felt really good.
Awesome. Another great question. What advice would you give to students about to go on Appies, like watching Alaskan State Troopers?
I guess go with an open mind. So obviously I was very excited to go on the Alaska Appy, but one of the other ones that I had been super excited about was a pharmacy management one, because that was the position I had taken for my job outside, or once I graduated, was going to be as a pharmacy manager. So I was like, this is the rotation for me. This is going to prepare me for, the job that I'm going to have. And unfortunately, it was kind of a bummer of a rotation just because of life circumstances that went on. It was the one right before my exam. So I feel like I was, maybe if I had staggered a more clinical rotation closer to my exams, I would have been in a better boat. So I thought that meant I was going to be set up for failure at my job that I was taking after I graduated. And that wasn't the case at all. It was just, a short term, not my favorite rotation. So definitely go with an open mind. Expect that some of the experiences that you weren't excited about might actually be really interesting. Some of the ones that you build up might just be not your cup of tea, but that doesn't mean that that whole area of practice is something worth writing off. So.
For our viewers who aren't aware what an Appy is an advanced pharmacy practice experience. You spend your last year of school not in the classroom, but on rotations. Every school does this slightly differently. URI does six-week rotations and then one off block, which is 6 weeks long. Some schools do shorter blocks. Some schools do longer blocks. Some schools just hand them to you. Other schools let you hand pick them. URI is in the latter category to the best of our ability. So you are able to sort of custom choose which rotations you'd like, and they'll do their best to get them for you, which usually works out pretty well.
Yeah, and to add to Rebecca's response, I think seek feedback and seek it in a way where you're seeking constructive feedback that you don't necessarily get defensive about. I think feedback's a big part of getting to where you want to be and actually improving versus constantly getting a pat on the back that is nice to hear, but doesn't really help you progress as a practitioner throughout your career. And then just to add to the question from before regarding URI, I mean, not just because it's the best pharmacy school in the nation, but I will say I work in Massachusetts, and URI students are so well respected, and you can really tell there's a great level of clinical application skills that students have coming onto rotations that's noticeable compared to some other institutions. So I just wanted to add that as well.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here and add to Kyle's. I have to say that it's unquestionably that, right? You get such a solid background in all the different types of science, and that's been in URI College of Pharmacy's been known for that for years. Even when I went last century, right? But and it has, and they're also a lot of the way the approach to teaching is very innovative. But I know a lot of PharmDs, and I see a lot of different PharmD students and in our fellowships. But it's unquestioned. The URI students are like you said, Kyle, like head and shoulders above. It's noticeable, just the working knowledge that you have, and that put me in very well stead, in industry. I mean, there was still a lot I had to learn. You hit the basics on like clinical trials and how things work, and drug applications for a marketing application. But it's the science that you need to have to be able to springboard wherever you want to go, and it sets you up that you can specialize just based on what you've learned in school.
It's perfect. Thank you. Could everyone go? Oh, one more question in the chat. A couple more. Okay. What is the most challenging aspect of your jobs, and what is the most rewarding? Which is good, because that was my question. I would like to know if everyone could share the most rewarding moments you've had.
I think with honestly, the most challenging part is often managing multiple responsibilities and kind of balancing. Sometimes what you want to do the most enjoyable may not be the most urgent. So you kind of have to maybe like push aside what you want for what is necessary at the time, which can feel, but then it's even more rewarding when you do have time. And what I find, like, which I'm sure most people echo, is like anytime I'm like face to face, like clinical care with patients, it reminds you why you're, maybe sometimes you can become a little jaded, and it reminds you like why I'm here, why you may work extra, why you're doing what you're doing. So I always enjoy the time I spend, for me on the psych unit, but with patients though.
Yeah, I would really echo what Mallory mentioned. I would say we are in pharmacy, you can be tasked with a lot of different things on your plate. So just really managing those can be challenging. But I would also say like the most rewarding thing is really like working with patients. I love like seeing pediatric patients every day, like their resilience. But I also really love like seeing learners be a part of that experience, seeing pharmacy students or residents become a part of the team and be welcomed into that environment. I think that's something that is like really special to me and something I really enjoy.
So I was going to say that people were the best part and the worst part of my job, but I think other people beat me to it. How about you get to incorporate, your area of interest into your job every day? I've been lucky enough that a lot of my jobs have paid for me to travel for the last 4 years. There's the picture that I sent you, Russell, for the advertisement for this. The last, no, well, not my current job, but the contract I had before this one, I was on the immunization team for the hospital. So one of the places that we got to fly to in a, small like 4-seater plane was the village of Ugashik, which had a winter population of 4 people. And we had a 75% vaccination rate. So that was really good. But it's like I have a picture of me like standing on a runway, and like my patients are sitting on 4-wheelers, and like that's how we gave our flu clinic. It was awesome. So it really felt like I made a difference.
Yeah. So I worked for like 3 years at Bluebird Bio, which does gene therapy, right? Which isn't something that you really think of when you go to pharmacy school. But what Bluebird does is one of the drugs or one of the products they make is gene therapy for sickle cell anemia. And on a regular basis, we would get to, which is unusual in industry, we would actually get to hear from patients and see what a difference them having like the gene therapy and how it changed their lives. Because when you have sickle cell, you have pain crises, you're in the hospital a lot, you have to go for regular transfusions, because your hemoglobin isn't right. So to be like that, that's like to be on the cutting edge of something that brings therapy to people that, it changes their lives. And it's like a humbling moment that you can be like part of that. Before industry, I worked in community pharmacy, and I enjoyed that too, right? One-on-one, interactions and the difference you can make there. And it's on a little bit different scale in industry, but it's fun because it's new stuff a lot of times, right? And you get to be a part of that. like you're a pioneer.
I like
Yeah,
that.
and I think some of this may be repeating what some of the other panelists mentioned, but yeah, I would agree with one of the biggest challenges being wearing multiple hats, so clinical, research, academic, and admin, and kind of juggling tasks. So prioritization skills and time management in organization are huge skills to have as a pharmacist in any of these roles. And I think one of the most rewarding things is just problem solving for really everyone and anyone that, you know, whether it's patient care related or just the other day, I fixed the insulin printer on the Pyxis machine, or the insulin label printer on the Pyxis machine, and it was broken for a few days, and the nursing staff is just thrilled. And I think I think it's in our nature to you know, figure things out for people, and that's one of the most rewarding, regardless of who the customer may be, a patient or a physician or a nurse or a colleague.
Sure, you're always wearing many hats. Let's see, next question we have here. So the question is essentially asking, what other fields interest you? So at any point in your pharmacist life, did you think you should have opted for this path career, rather may have opted for an alternate career as the world's diversified to its peak with different careers? So,
I guess
go ahead.
I have a lot of thoughts. I love like sports medicine and physical therapy, so that's definitely a route I also considered. But this is, yeah, that's it, I guess. But you, I was gonna mention something else, but it was pharmacy related. I was gonna add that, like, I guess I'm adding on to the last question. Something I really enjoy is I do love giving presentations. I think I used to not, but after residency, you're like, wait, what's it like to just not like constantly give in services? So I like volunteer to give CEs on topics I like, even if it may seem a little silly. So I love like psychedelics, which are really like, you know, in the now. So I often like kind of get to do both things by giving like a CE on psilocybin. So, you know, those are things like I kind of interject into a job. So even though I'm not like a research pharmacist, it's not FDA approved, you're able to kind of mix it. But yeah, I think every job I've thought down that path, but I also like, you can make pharmacy, like, let's say you're in your 50th year and you're like, oh my God, I should have done PT school. I mean, you could always go back if you really feel that way. But like nowadays pharmacy is so diverse. I think you can really find a niche that you will enjoy within the field. So don't fret too much.
On that same note, someone asked earlier, what advice you'd give to students regarding career exploration? Because I know there is a lot out there. Definitely appies are a good place to start. I've heard. Anything else for students earlier in their careers?
Well, I would say I didn't choose to travel early in my career. When I first got out of school, I worked hospital strictly for 4 years, strict hospital, and then I switched over to a military setting for 3 years, and that was both inpatient and outpatient rotations before I finally decided I was gonna, you know, take the plunge and start doing these travel contracts. But what I found is that, you know, rural areas are like in huge need of all the allied health services, but including pharmacy. Alaska until recently did not have their own pharmacy school. They now have one where you can do your undergrad here and then you can do your grad years at a sister school in the lower 48. But, you know, it is hard to recruit pharmacists to come up to these rural areas. So they are definitely incentives to come up here. Like, you know, they have Indian Health Service has a well-advertised student loan repayment program, but they're also willing to accept new grads. You know, I went into my path without having done a residency requirement, which I know is unusual for people who have graduated in recent years. And they're willing to do a lot of on-the-job training. So if you're, and the flip side, they're going to have to ask you to wear many hats. They're going to have you to ask you to be adaptive to your environment, to your work environment, to be a team player. So if you can bring those characteristics to the table, they're going to provide you with a ton of learning experiences.
That's perfect. I have two targeted questions. The first one's for Dr. Lee. Did you always know you wanted to do pediatric pharmacy, or was it introduced to you in Appies and something you found you can see yourself doing in the long run, and why?
So for pediatrics, I have always thought at least I had an interest in pediatrics. Growing up, my mom was a kindergarten teacher, so I spent a lot of time with her in her classroom. So I think I had been exposed to some aspects of pediatrics, but I think I didn't fully understand what that meant. To be like a pediatric pharmacist or to work in the pediatric field. I would say one of the big stepping stones for me was working with Dr. Matson through her elective course that she offers in advanced pediatric pharmacotherapy. I think things may have changed a little bit now, and then additionally through my Appies. So through my Appies, having exposure to pediatrics there. But the piece of pediatrics that I love is that there's every disease states within pediatrics. There's pediatric oncology, there's pediatric emergency medicine, ICU, ambulatory care, outpatient care. So all those different facets of pharmacy and those different specializations you can apply to pediatric principles and pediatric pharmacokinetics. So that's sort of like the piece of pharmacy that I've fallen in love with. And pediatric ED kind of had a touch of all those different things. So that's kind of why I love where I've kind of landed. I don't know if I fully answered the question. So I guess pediatrics has been a piece of my life for some time now, but really was solidified through Appies.
Chance to try anything.
Yeah.
Next one's for Dr. Fraielli. Could you talk more about your role as a pharmacist in an ICU?
Yeah, so actually, it's the acute care cardiology unit, which is includes a step down and more general medicine cardiology units. So I'm actually not in the ICU, but I can speak to. I work closely with the cardiac care unit pharmacist at the institution, so I can speak to that a little bit. You're always on your toes, similar to Patrick's role in the ED, constantly having to engage in emergencies, whether it's cardiac arrest or cannulating someone for advanced circulatory support with ECMO. Kind of in a cool way, seeing devices that you may not see in other patient care areas, such as left ventricular assist devices, Impella devices, to augment cardiac output for patients that may have just had a heart attack or have severely reduced ejection fraction. So managing pharmacotherapy with the complexities of those devices and some of the pharmacokinetic and dynamic changes in those settings is kind of cool to navigate, and really applying some niche literature to those situations, and again, just helping to problem solve things that may not be very easy to kind of figure out for other healthcare professionals. There's also, even in the cardiac ICU, there's a fair amount of patient counseling. So patients that are stable after having a STEMI and now go from taking one medication to 7 or 8, and helping patients understand why they're taking those medications, and really stressing the importance of compliance and the importance of the medications on preventing future events, such as when they came to the hospital for, and side effects to look out for and call for. So that's always a rewarding part of the ICU and really any area of the cardiac on the cardiac units. And it's a unique role, and you see patients of all severity levels, which makes every day exciting.
That's awesome. Thank you. Next question. This is for everybody. So just whoever wants to go first can jump in. But what do you wish you knew on your first day of work? or it could be first day of Appies.
So Russ, I know you gave us a heads up on this question. So I surveyed a few colleagues to try to just gain a few different perspectives other than what I came up with myself. And I think trying to compile everyone's answers, and these are mostly people within about 10 years of having graduated. There's three types of opportunities that may present to you in your career, early on in your career. And some are the voluntold type. So opportunities that you're kind of not forced to do, but asked to do by a boss or your institution to help propel the team. You may be best suited based on your experience or your role. And it's maybe, maybe seen as busy work, but helping to propel the team. Then there's opportunities that you have the chance to say no to. And I think learning the skill or learning that or knowing that you can say no to certain things is helpful to know from the get-go. I think it's easy as pharmacists to want to say yes, and we're naturally people pleasers and take on a lot of work because we feel we can. But it can lead to a lot on your plate in a short amount of time. So for those types of opportunities, you try to maximize the opportunities that are both valuable to your career progression, but also opportunities that you have a high level of interest in, and maybe opportunities that you have a low level of interest in and that won't have a significant impact in your career. Learning the ability to say no in a cordial way, or helping to solve that issue with helping navigate the issue but not actually taking the job itself. And then there's the opportunities that you create, which really sets you apart or are really opportunities that might advance you in your career. And I think those are things like setting up new services that you find really interesting, engaging in committees and start creating new protocols and policies, things like that, whatever may be of interest to you. So really knowing the perspective, maybe 10 years into your career, that all these types of opportunities are going to come up for you, and how to approach those is sort of helpful, and it's helpful to know from the get-go. Hopefully that wasn't too long-winded and confusing, but
No, I liked it. Thank you.
I have two, I guess. So my first one is you often over catastrophize things, and I don't remember most of the things I used. Like, I just think about like presentations that, or like even just a topic discussion, maybe when you're an AFI student, you like, it's this big deal or an exam, and like I don't remember it. So I think that's good to, it's like, not to say don't try, but like I think give yourself a little grace, and you're much more resilient in that sense. But also imposter syndrome is like, I don't know, I suffer from it, and I think it holds you back from opportunities if you feel like, well, I'm not an expert, so I can't even try. And that's when I found that when I've kind of gone away from my fear of not being good enough and tried things, that you like learn a lot, and you realize like you're much more capable than you think. So don't let, like, a lot of people who are very successful weren't like perfect when they applied. So don't think just because you're not like so-and-so expert that you can't even put yourself in that situation.
That was great. Thank you. It was very nice. Nice thoughts to close this out with.
Yeah, I guess piggybacking off Mallory really quickly, I do think that's a common misconception, is whether it's going on to Appies or going into a residency or whatever you may choose to do, you think you need to be an expert day one. Yeah. And really it's a lot of those experiences are about learning and kind of some of it being independent, some of it learning through experience that you're going to have. But I don't set the bar too high for yourself to start. Just know that you don't know everything, and that you're willing to take the steps to get there and gain the experience and knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with that, just because I have hired a lot of people, and no one's going to have every bullet in your job description. Though I used to be like one of the people that, unless I could do every single bullet, I wouldn't even apply. And then I would have people that they could do one bullet and they applied. And I was like, why are you? But really what you look for is the aptitude. Like, does the person have like the like the attitude, the whole, how they're going to get along with people. Do they, have those kind of soft skills? Are they willing to learn is like the big thing, because no one could be an expert. I mean, I'm still learning something new every day. You would think I wouldn't, but it's just, there's just so much to conquer in the world of just pharmacy or industry or anywhere, right? It's just a lot. So yeah, it's really more like your capability and, your potential that gets assessed for a job.
That was great. Thank you. Our last question for the group, which actually ties into our current discussion quite nicely. What advice would you give to an incoming freshman? So if you were just now starting over at URI, what would you tell yourself?
So the first thing that comes to my mind is enjoy your time. I think about those years, and I would say that would be the first thing I would say. Just enjoy those years, enjoy your time, be present with everyone around you. I think one of the great things that URI offers is the 06 program. So you have this alignment of your class rather than a competition for various seats and whatnot. So enjoy your time.
Yeah, Patrick, that's the exact first thing that came to my mind too. Enjoy your time. And I think to add to it, I think we have an idea of going to college and like kind of setting up for your life. I remember, like, you are living life now. Stepping in as a freshman into college and going through our college, like, that is a great phase of life. You're living part of your life. So while academics and everything going on is going to be a huge portion of it, and you're going to be working hard towards your goals, just remember that this is a great part of your life.
I was going to add, keep a lookout for the opportunities that URI or wherever you choose to go has that are unique to that location. When I was at URI, I took 2 credits in sailing. I think they also offered scuba diving when I was there. I'm not sure if they still do.
They do. I
and
tried to get into it. Didn't work with my schedule.
But yeah, you got, well, the freshmen will have 4 or 6 years. So tell that to apply. And then when URI sent me to Alaska to do, I did 12 weeks of internship up there. I took classes at the local University of Alaska in native basket weaving and fur sewing, and those credits also transferred over. So
One other small piece I wanted to add to, study abroad if you have the opportunity, or at least look into it to see if you would be interested in it. That's a great offering that URI has that many colleges of pharmacy aren't able to include in their program. But thinking about that as you enter freshman year, to set yourself up to potentially study abroad, I absolutely loved my experience going to Florence, Italy, and would highly recommend going anywhere, but it's a great opportunity.
Slave in the kitchen. All right, awesome. Thank you everyone so much. I really appreciate your time. If anyone has other questions, speak now for hold your peace. Thank you everyone for coming out. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to us. Have a great night.